Hi everyone, we will start in about 3 minutes. Just a time for everyone to join the session. Ok, bonjour tout le monde. C'est le 3e jour pour Futureproof IT. J'espère que vous allez bien. Okay, I'm just kidding. Welcome back everyone for last day at Future IT 2020. I hope you are having a good morning, afternoon, evening, day, night, whatever you are, wherever you are on this planet. I just hope everything is fine for you. My name is Untitled Chapter and I will be your MC for the day. if my accent sounds funny for you, it's because I'm the French co-organizer of this event. And first of all, I would like to thank a lot my friend in this adventure. So Becky and Chad from Electrona, who done a really amazing job creating this event from scratch and maintaining the group operational and bringing a lot of quality in the way we did things. I would also like to thank Tom from Technology for his sympathy and positive mindset during this process that led us here. And finally, I would also like to thank my own team from Abelioni, who managed to keep the company alive when I'm doing clone things here with you. So this event would not have been possible also without the help of our sponsor, Grove Technologies, Simple Thread, Autonomy Co-op, the New IT, and PC Medics. They basically help us here to bring all of you with their help and their exposure that provide us to us, which basically mean we raised now up to 5,346 US dollars for heart-to-heart internationals. The fund will that you contributed to collect will help them to continue their work providing medical supplies needed to fight COVID-19 all around the world, basically. Just to give you some insight, Futureproof IT so far is 131 attendees across 10 different countries. So that means basically all the countries you see in gray right now are legacy IT, where the yellow one are Futureproof IT. For the first session of the day, we will have Harry Stamerjohann from Zentral Pro Services that will talk with us about identity and security in a post-AD Active Directory world. And that's clearly a topic I'm running on. I see a lot of these things nowadays on my day-to-day work. So I hope it's the same for you, and I hope you will really enjoy the talk from Henry today. So please welcome Henry. And Tom, I think you can turn on Henry video and microphone.
So. Sharing the screen. Can you see the screen? I guess so. So, yeah, thank you all.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, thank you all for having me at Futureproof IT. So 2 days ago, on Monday, Rich Troughton did present here, including the long journey how SAP has transformed their Macs from being bound to Active Directory into a cloud-first, highly scalable setup. So SAP impressively offers a remote-friendly modern Mac experience to its users. And the day after, a quite opposite approach was presented by Kyle Kingsley, and he explained how his shop is running as on-premises as possible to keep control and accountability all inside. So both directions show there's no single truth. And on a side note, prevalent with both is that they use SSO certificates in their organization to work with identity. So you have to find your own way, but we all benefit from the shared knowledge here in the community. So thanks, Rich and Kyle, for sharing that info ahead. A quick look at the agenda. We start with a short intro, who we are at Zentral Pro Services, and then we look at the standard security requirements that exist, a baseline. Then we see how this is achieved with Active Directory. For many of you, that is nothing new. And then we look into some challenges on this architecture that exists nowadays. And then we go into the post-AD world. The claim is a bit bold, so we focus here on the relevant details. And we conclude with a case study that includes a solution we have implemented with a couple of customers. That is called ident, and it's a workflow just for user certificate managing primarily. So yeah, this will be presented a little bit as well. So Zentral Pro Services, we're a research and development centric consulting company based in Germany. And we provide professional services to customers, and we also liaise with B2B partners in Germany and abroad. So we're quite small, so we try to focus on research and development, and yeah, we don't have any sales team. So we're also Jamf partners for just integration and pro services delivery. And some folks may know us from Zentral, our open source project for event log collection, which we've launched a few years ago. All right, so security requirements have been always there. They are nothing new. So, and the primary purpose is to secure the connections between devices and of course, secure the users that are working on the devices. And in corporate IT, the viewpoint nowadays exceeds the single network with all resources located behind a firewall. Because today the users, as well as a large amount of devices, are all spread around the globe, with more external services used than ever. So the network boundaries are quite blurred. Of course, fleet management is used to control the endpoints wherever they are. You want to enforce encryption and run software updates. And yeah, of course, you want to ensure that the device is corporate and that it's managed. For macOS, you'll be going to use Jamf, Monkey, Fleetsmith, Workspace ONE, Mozile, Kanji, and other solutions exist. And most of them integrate with MDM. And some people even combine one and the other into having a full, rich set of managing tools. And to manage Windows, this could be often nowadays Microsoft Intune. And you may want to look into G Suite as well, because they have some late additions on managing Windows 10 clients. You want to authenticate primarily based on identity, because you want to know in your network or on your services who someone is across the multitude of devices. So a device itself gets identified by certain attributes or also by a certificate before the device is authorized and granted access. So that's the whole idea here. And nowadays, with including multi-factor authentication in this process, will help to avoid phishing campaigns towards the end users. Then having a good audit trail on the network traffic and combine this with an effective endpoint security strategy is also an essential thing to have. And when you have all this in place and have time left and resources and the budget, then the more complex conditional access and zero trust scenarios may be a next step to take. Okay, so this is just a recap of how things in AD work. So it's a short explanation. So traditionally, organizations use a core identity provider like Microsoft Active Directory to manage user identities and access to resources within the on-premises network. So the AD service holds records of devices, users, and forms groups. And based on that, you can assign permission sets and organize these elements to work with the devices. So you need to have proper configured on-premises DNS for this. And when this works, a user can log on with a username and a password and authenticate against the Active Directory service. And when everything was right, they will grant it a TGT, a Kerberos ticket from the AD services. And with this ticket, single sign-on works, and you can, for example, access an internal file share without providing your password and username again. And this setup can be extended with other services. And interesting here is the ADCS, which if you have a valid Kerberos ticket, you can issue certificates for a device and also for a user. So with the AD certificate payload, and I have to mention, we focus here primarily on the Macintosh, or on the Apple. So with the AD certificate payload, if that's distributed to an endpoint, you have the advantage that this setup works well with the mobile user accounts on AD joint Macs. And so with these certificates, in the end, the goal is to that IT can control and allow access on the network for Wi-Fi, on the wired network, and also for VPN. All right. So there's, of course, some challenges nowadays because with the explosion of SaaS solutions and team collaboration tools like Slack getting used across the company, remote access to external services are happening from unknown locations. So the idea of SSO, to have access control, but use a single identity, has to be extended to those services. For this, very often web-based protocols like SAML are used for providing SSO on the external services. So this is easy to set up for Slack and other services, and it keeps to uphold the security posture of an organization. The internal AD can be used with federation via ADFS, so that the whole service or the whole directory is available also for cloud services to work with SAML, for example. Or you are going to sync your directory from Active Directory with your preferred identity provider and have the same directory records over there. The aim in general is to provide a unified secure access solution across network borders. So, and then a special challenge is when users need to connect to the corporate network for things like renewing a password every 90 days or updating AD certificates. So this can create some tension, especially in nowadays where the work from home scenario is prevalent, and the users are connecting from their home routers and maybe with unpredictable network connections. So you want to address these kind of scenario before it hits the end users and puts strain on the help desk. Okay. Now we're at post AD. So what happens if we cut the cord? So first and simply, you do not bind the computers to AD anymore, but you lose some things that have worked well in the past, or almost well in the past, and they have been implemented to macOS for the corporate world specifically. So you will lose the single sign-on login at login window, and also the automatic user provisioning with the advantage of having the AD certificate payload kicking in and providing the user certificates that no longer works. So some functionality needs to be restored here in this new mode of operation. Nomad, Apple Enterprise Connect are very prominent solutions of the recent years here. So they help to keep local passwords in sync with AD, and Kerberos works fine, and then again, single sign-on works fine. So, and also based on the identity with a Kerberos ticket, you can trigger some scripts, or in Nomad, you have a menu item where you can, the user having a user certificate acquired with a self-service action. So in latest 10.15, Apple has consolidated the above SSO functionality with Kerberos into macOS Catalina. And this is also showing that Apple takes care about bringing some stuff into the future. And it's interesting to see what will happen this year with 10.16 announced. Still, authentication and authorization is something that is also with 10.15 extended into the setup process on automatic device enrollment. So with an identity provider or an LDAP service in between, and of course with a full MDM enrollment, you can lock down details like the full name and the username just to set the principal user on the device. So this is a great addition. However, that may not work for every organization, and for those organizations, Jamf Connect is another answer. Users, again, can constantly authenticate with the identity provider at the login screen, and you can enforce multi-factor authentication for logon, but also use Jamf Connect to run some subtle runtime functionality pre or post the regular user authentication. Then we also will see in the landscape that there's the ADCS connector from Jamf, which gives you a proxied access to the ADCS service from Windows. This allows to distribute certificates outside of the corporate network in Jamf Pro setups. I think something similar exists for Workspace ONE, but I'm not sure about that. So if you look in very close detail here with the ADCS connector, you may find some minor trade-offs, but they might be fully okay with the security department because the certificates happen to be on the device. If this is not fine, then you have to unfold some advanced tactics to address this. Of course, still, endpoints could use the SCAP protocol directly. This works well on-prem and may work well around the globe, but most organizations are reluctant to expose their ADCS service to the internet. And there's good reasons for that, as shown in the screenshot here. Okay, we're now at the case study. So SSO certificates have been used to authenticate on identity since very long. And because they are issued by a known trusted source with a trust chain. The idea here is that you have a single identity per user, and you can grant that with holding off with a certificate. This reduces the amount where a user has to provide a username and password over and over again, and this is often referred to as single sign-on. And the authentication happens by identifying and also validating the end identity of the computer or the user that is requesting access. And this is done by exchanging a X509 certificate with a client and the server. So, and this is followed by an authorization process that determines what permissions and access the end identity will be granted. Another use case for this is when you implement 802.1x access on networks, which is also often based on certificates. And this is a topic that many people may have faced in their IT career. So device certificates are usually stored in the system keychain, and they are simpler to distribute with an MDM, because if the MDM speaks to the device already, then it can just deliver the certificate, or the device connects the MDM and just grabs the certificate. The higher goal, however, is to work with user certificates, which are usually stored in the login keychain. And this is a bit more involved because especially in the automatic device enrollment, you have to know which is the user, the principal user of the device, to have the information for being in the user certificate. So often those certificates get issued for extended periods. However, the concept of working with short-lived certificates will increase the overall security posture pretty well. I'm sure many of you have encountered a variation of these requests by a security department or CISO office, or just customers that reach out that they want to implement 802.1x network access with trusted certificates. So then when you're working towards an implementation, you research and, for example, work with configuration profiles delivered by an MDM, and you encounter some friction, a bit more friction as expected. So you will see that users have to confirm and perform some steps manually. And this leads to a situation where sometimes the whole project doesn't work that well. And this first leads to even moments where this is questioned. Everything can be challenged, of course, but I think if it works and start using with SSO certificates is a very effective security measure. And we've seen this mentioned by Rich, that he's using this as a top or priority thing in the recent rollout of their modern client. So managing secure identities, especially in a remote-only world, is a topic of huge interest. So, and to bring a bit more context towards this, some months ago, we have been out to solve a special problem in this case. It was back in 2019, predating the COVID-19 scenario we're all in. And we strive to share a little bit of the approach we've taken to address some shortcomings that we've seen with a customer. Oops, I have to switch here. Yeah. So we got asked by a customer to join a project on reworking the macOS deployment for them. and the focus was mainly set on 10.14, and they just released 10.15. They former have been used Max bound to AD, and they used Enterprise Connect to sync the passwords for the user, or to have a workflow for that. And they used AD certificates for 802.1x network access already since very, very long. And this setup was challenged by transitioning into a full flexible workplace model. So that was the driver. And with no fixed office desks, Wi-Fi only, with, of course, 802.1x, and primarily work with mobile computers. So the setup was supposed to work outside of the corporate network. So, and this should be either performed on a new computer by the end user, but also by an IT service provider or help desk people in a factory style rollout. So yeah, there's a little edge case here. So they also wanted to preserve the option for multi-user login, which next to other reasons lead to the use of Jamf Connect. So now macOS clients integrate with a federated cloud identity solution, and they are some way aligned with the Windows 10 and Windows Hello rollout the customers running as well. So in the project, we've seen some issues in the strategy, how to manage the user certificates. And the idea here was to address this with a minimum of friction towards the process and towards the end user. So for that, we aimed for a special solution, and we proposed a workflow here to complement Jamf Connect. And the idea as well was to have greater control over the process in issuing user certificates, and add this with auditing capability on the full user certificate acquisition. So we named that workflow ident, and it's getting used at some other customers as well. So this at this specific client, the whole setup with a cloud deployment was ready around February of 13. And yeah, the lockdown here in Germany started about 5 weeks later. So the workflow we've developed and rolled out is based on a userland app that knows how to handle ID tokens that come from the IDP. And Jamf Connect just acquires that token, and we use this functionality. And with the info in this token, we create a certificate request on the device. We sign it, and we post that request to our own ident gateway service. So this is running in the cloud. The gateway is allowed to talk to a distinct PKI that stays private. So we proxy the traffic here, and in the background, we use the full SCAP protocol. So in this scenario rollout so far, it's the Windows ADCS service with NDES role connected at the moment, but other other services, other PKIs would work as well. We do this process with extra checks and balances in between, then we return a payload that finally results in a certificate, including ID preferences get installed in the user login keychain. So as mentioned, the gateway service is provisioned in the cloud on a container service. So this works in Azure, AWS, and will work on others as well. And we designed the agent and the gateway especially to create a predictable and auditable process here when private identity certificates are issued. So as mentioned, we tightly integrate with Jamf Connect. And for this reason, we work with the typical identity providers that Jamf Connect supports. So with all of this, we discovered this works pretty well in a multi-user scenario, because the heavy lifting on allowing a multi-user login is performed by Jamf Connect, and we do the rest in the background. So best we see a quick demo here. Oops, I have to change that. All right. So here we see how we play with Jamf Connect together. Here's a logon in Jamf Connect. We provide a password, and in the background, we will see that there's another authentication, of course, for creating a local user. And in the background, we will receive an ID token from that session. So a local user is created, whatever steps are in between here. and choose your look. And now the Finder starts and the user session is there. So you immediately notice that we launch our ident application only in the user land. And this will verify the installed certificate and also triggers the action to install the user certificate fully in this process without extra steps in between. So if we look into the keychain, we will see that there's the ID preferences that allow log on with a Wi-Fi or network. And we have the certificate and the private key that is on the device. So now if we try to make a connection, so we use that certificate to change to an internal network, which we do right now. And this one is 802.1x, and it works without any extra dialogues for the end user. And this session could be going on with, you log out of the computer and you're back in Jamf Connect, and another user can log in. So this experience is very much like, it was back then when the computer has been bound to AD with the AD certificate payload. Okay, so the simple takeaway here is that we have simplified how the identity certificate and the 802.1x access is integrated here with the client, and that works with Jamf Connect on Unbound Macs. So for this, we use Jamf Pro, of course, Jamf Connect login that signs in with Azure and does the local user provisioning, and of course, gives us the ID token. We manage with the ident app the user certificate lifecycle and provide the login keychain items. So we use this on Azure AD in the demo that I presented. So this requires Azure AD Enterprise app for Jamf Connect as well as ident. And of course, we have the ident gateway, which here is deployed on Azure Container Services. And the PKI we use is a Windows 2019 NDES, which is not exposed to the outside world. I have a second demo that is not running with Jamf Connect and shows how we can obtain a user certificate on behalf of attestation against the identity provider. We have another session. The certificate is already there, and we use this certificate for starting a VPN session with IKE v2. Just to verify, this works. We have connected with VPN. It could also be a third-party VPN client like AnyConnect. However, we disconnect, and now either certificate could expire, but we just throw it away here. We delete it. So, of course, something has to break now. We can't connect anymore. And this would, of course, create a ticket. But in the background, we will check for the presence of a user certificate, and we do a lifecycle management. So we can notify the user and show them a dialog to get a new certificate, because we check this in the background. The user wants to get a new certificate. Now, 10.15 feature, the AS Web authentication session is used here. User authenticates. Could be multi-factor involved here. And in the background, we do the same dance as with Jamf Connect, but now this is a full user session, and we have gained our certificate, and the private key again is sitting on the device. Try to use this certificate just for verification. And it works. We can connect again to VPN. We'll verify this again. Because we want to use this for the Wi-Fi access as well. And it should work. Okay. Wi-Fi access is there, 802.1x. We don't stop here because as we hold the cloud backend, we can push the information for the admins of the latest session into Jamf. with the session ID and the UPN that was involved with this session, the Jamf admin can go to the cloud team and can ask for seeing the logs. And then you have a full audit trail that is available for each session, whether it's kicked off on the process with Jamf Connect or directly with the user. So this rich audit trail can be pushed further because this is already in Azure, could be used and transfer this to Azure Sentinel, the CM system. And yeah, there's more things possible here. All right. So if we are going back to how to authenticate the identity, a very special thing in this case here is we attribute the device to the user and vice versa. So in the certificate subject name, we see the user UPN and the device asset number. And this info gets presented when the certificate is used to authenticate or to authorize and ask for authentication with a service. Yeah, so this also helps IT and have a good security posture. So the takeaway here is the users can simply authorize with an IDP to get a personal identity certificate in a self-driven process. Again, we use the ident app here. We show that we can have a proper lifecycle management with acquisition, validation, and notify on expiry, or even if the certificate is missing. And we use a native authentication flow with macOS 10.15 here. This, again, is a fully ID token-based procedure. And yeah, so we interact with Jamf Pro, and we also do a very rich auditing here. The infrastructure services are the same as before, and yeah, you can add a CM system here if you want. So the idea here was to accelerate and simplify the management of a user's identity, and of course help to offload IT. So the setup works pretty well, of course, as shown with VPN for a remote-only workforce. So yeah, it was created long before the COVID-19 situation. However, yeah, it holds in this moment. So our aim was to reduce the friction that was seen before and provide a good self-driven process when it's needed. So as mentioned, we detect and notify if a user certificate has been expired or gone missing. And yeah, we use a proper user attestation workflow. And as you've seen there, you have a tight auto handshake with Jamf Connect. And yeah, this is pretty valuable for those specific customers that need to maintain a multi-user setup. Probably not with every computer, but in certain areas. Yeah, so then again, interfacing with the Jamf API allows for even more interaction, as we've shown so far, and mentioned already that we can ship the logs towards a CM system that makes a larger organization happy if this appears in the audit trail and in a SOC or whatever, if something goes wrong. So ident is meant to be effective for those risk-aware organizations and enterprises that require this extended kind of auditing. It's of course a niche use case. And yeah, so this was built to keep the security posture up to date, especially in remote client scenarios. And we come to an end here. We strive to share a bit of the journey that we've taken and about the reasonings and the experience we've made. And we hope that some of this can inspire you to start working more towards using certificates and make good decisions in case you cut the cord and leave the direct connection with Mac bound to AD, or just give some ideas to further improve your existing setup. If you want to discuss your own scenario in detail, we're happy to chat. And as you can think, we work with B2B partners, with selected B2B partners. Those could be the one that you may already work with in your territory if you have a special interest in what we've done. So an integration engagement then must be entailed because of the complexity of the individual organization infrastructure. But the basic idea is that this works like Apple did this with Enterprise Connect. So again, if you want to talk specifically on that, contact your partners or us. Yeah, and that's the presentation. That's all I have for now. Thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot, Harry. I will just turn my video. Okay.
Go to Slack, right?
Oh, I will ask you the question directly.
Yeah.
I got the question, the Q&A part from directly. So I have a question from our attendees so far, which is basically, do you have browser SSO integration with IDENT?
So the certificate is in the keychain, in the user keychain. So of course, using a web or connecting to a website with the right browser, like Chrome or Safari, this works. That the certificate is used for that as well. Yeah.
Okay. And do you have a way to manage the identity preference set automatically? So you can basically provide the final URL of the website and ask IDENT to automatically set it in the kitchen?
Yeah, so what we've done is, so we use a template, and you can put more than one SSID in the template. And of course, we respect the order of the template. For changing the order on the system, this requires, of course, more privileges. So for this, we have a command line tool that just once a user connected to the preferred Wi-Fi, and a record exists on the system, we can just push this up into putting it on the top of the Wi-Fi's to connect with. So yeah, all of that, as much as possible, is built into IDENT. Yeah.
Nice.
And in the end, what we're doing is just like, you can do all of this manually, but some people will not manage to select the right certificate or all of that. So we try to not interfere with what the OS gives us. And of course, we hit a wall here and there with the ACLs and the keychain, but that is a shared pain with all the developers and all the people who work with that kind of thing years before we started working on that.
Another question from the attendees. Did you test this on G Suite instead of AD and Azure AD?
You mean with being the identity provider?
Yes.
So yeah, there's a caveat, of course, in terms of OpenID Connect. However, so we haven't actually tested that. We use the same mechanisms as a Jamf Connect. So, but if we go the native way, I have to give you feedback on that, if that works or not. But we are G Suite shop ourselves, so yeah, it's easy to try that out and give you feedback.
Yeah, and another one is not specifically related to your talk, but to what you briefly talk about during your slide is the radius being insecure. Can you talk a little bit more about this?
I didn't get the full question. Sorry. The right?
Oh, in your slide, at one point you had a small poke about radius being insecure.
I didn't get where's the question? Sorry, I don't get the full. Is the question somewhere?
Oh, I think what he's saying is, yeah, he has one of the slides pokes at radius for being insecure. Can you expand more about your concerns about radius's security levels?
Radius being insecure? No. Okay, this was just. Is it that slide? I think it was no. That slide is it. Does this?
The one with Slack. The slide with Slack.
Okay, yeah. So this is just a conversation that I found that happened about 1 or 2 weeks ago on Slack. So it just gives an impression that how controversial the 802.1x discussion can lead to. So this is just like this is not our statement, of course. This is just how people have different opinions on implementing that. So so the dodgy, untrusted search chain on the radio server, That's not us, of course. Yeah, I don't know how different those setups look out there. There's a lot of things where you can do things right and where you can do things wrong. And this was more to, yeah, give you a little lead that, yeah, this is a controversial topic, but if you do it straight, I really think this is a great way of giving access to a network. So I have no doubts with that. So the takeaway here of this question is, no, I don't think that radio setup is insecure. It's just how you build it up.
Yeah, I think as always, with security technology, if you do it wrong, yeah, it may be insecure, but if you do it right, it will be secure.
Yeah.
So another question for you will be, where is the authentication token key stored after login with Gem Connect? Can it pass cache anytime natively?
No, yeah, so we have some feature requests, and I think Joel, yeah, we discussed this with Joel a couple of months ago when we met in person. We store it right now in the system keychain, and it gets removed as soon as possible. So, however, ident itself can't remove the ID token because, yeah, it just reads from the system keychain. It can't change anything in the system keychain. And yeah, so the ID token will expire. There's also the idea of having a refresh token that if that works, if we gain the refresh token, let's say from Jamf Connect, then we could run continuously using that token and refresh and refresh. That would require a little bit of addressing in the code of ident. However, all those variations are, of course, thought about and yeah, are on a potential to-do list. Right now, we focus just on what was needed for the few customers. And yeah, so we're developing the solution as long as there's a need for. I have to mention that this whole thing was just started because there are constraints with how Apple has designed MDM, and there's big hopes that Apple is addressing this in a better way in a future OS. So if we can spare to use a solution and to do extra hops, yeah, it's better to not do it. But however, there are specific cases, like with the customer scenario, where this was needed. And as Rich has shown, there's other ways to just work with user certificates. It's more like how you run the order and what is the set for an organization. I would just assume that at SAP, they don't have that many line of business applications. They deploy Office and that's it. And of course, there's other organizations that have tons of special software with departments. So deployment takes much longer. And for that reason, they may have an IT service provider doing extra steps. And then you have the problem of who's the principal owner of the device. Is it the IT tech or is it the end user? How to address this? So that might be a problem that is with customer A and customer B, but not with customer S like SAP. So, right.
Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you. I think we have no more questions so far, and we are running time out. So thank you again for your participation.
Thanks.
And we will do a small break until the next session. We will be at 10 a.m. Eastern Time and 4 p.m. European Time.
Cool. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.